I always tell people, even if you're thinking about buying another house, go ahead and get a home equity line available to you now, because not to get like technically into mortgages, but your down payment cannot, the only time your down payment can be a loan is secured property. So you can use your equity from one house to buy another house, and that's important too.
What's up, family? Welcome to another episode of the Traffic Sales and Profit Show. My name is Lamar. I'm your host, and we're here to talk all things black business, black wealth, and guess what? Today, we're going to continue the conversation with Tanya Blanchard. She's the CEO of Madison Chase Capital Advisors, a mortgage loan advisory firm. And I'm so excited because today we get to talk about real estate.
Amen.
And generational wealth through real
Yes.
estate. Right, and I know that's kind of like what you really like to dive into, but welcome. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you. Super excited. Thank you for having me.
Now, this is all. Now, before we jump into it, I always like to ask people about their backgrounds and how they got into it. Like, you were not like just born into mortgage loans.
No,
You know,
I was
like you were in high school.
no,
like my next step is to do mortgage.
My background's always been finance. So years ago, I worked for Payne Weber in New York City, and I got my Series 7 in '63. First job was at a bank as a teller. So I've always been in finance, and how I actually got into mortgages was actually in the middle. I was recently divorced, and I was selling health insurance at the time, and I was thinking, what could I do? I just didn't want to miss my children were small at the time, and I just didn't want to miss, Thanksgiving lunch and dinners, and then, can I take off from work? So I made the move to step out on faith and go 100% commission as a loan officer. And recently divorced, I believe money muddles things, so I did no alimony, no child support, and I was like, okay, this is it. I just jumped off the building without the parachute.
No, did you say 100%?
100%. I've been 100% commission for 19 years.
Wow. Okay. Let's talk about that for a second, because that is different than most people. Because that's like no security. That's all security out the door. Really, I always talk about entrepreneurship being, you got to go out and hunt.
Right.
And like, hey, you know what? If I want to eat, I got to go out and kill something to get that food. So that literally is living that lifestyle. Yep. How different was that for you when you started living
When
that
I
lifestyle?
first started it, the first year was definitely, 2 small children, rent, car note. It was definitely overwhelming. The first year, I think I always told, I made like $16,000 my first year. But my second year, I made $105,000. And I was at 50% commission. So I really made $210 if you really think about it. But what I loved about it is that it enabled me to not have an income cap on my income. How much money I make is really what I do. So although it seemed scary at the beginning, I would say probably by year 3, I didn't even feel like I was 100% commission, because you just learn, you just got to keep that pipeline full. You have to just go out and network. My little joke to my broker at the time was like, no loans, time to hit those streets, time to get out there, start networking, and doing what you do to provide for your family.
All right. Now, I love it because what you do directly impacts people's net worth.
Absolutely.
Right. And can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely.
So for you, because I got some questions, because there's a lot of conversations going on around about whether people should own or, hey, you shouldn't own, you should only rent. And I want to get your take on that. Right. That's an open loop for y'all. Right. We come back to that in just 1 second. But why do you think real estate is so important to building generational wealth?
Oh, well, that's the biggest reason for the wealth gap for blacks is really home ownership. So many people actually got their start. I mean, we couldn't buy homes legally until 1968. That's one of the reasons Martha's Vineyard is so, I just bought a house there. That's one of the reasons Martha's Vineyard is so special to black people, because you could buy in Martha's Vineyard in the 1900s.
I didn't know that.
They let you buy there. So home ownership is just so crucial. It's just one of those things that when you die and you don't have a house to leave to your child, what are you leaving them? And that's what's happened. We have a house. I've got quick stories. One, I have a girlfriend. They bought a house. A grandfather was a veteran in Brooklyn. $10,000. Bought it in like 1960, whatever. How much you think that house is worth now in Brooklyn?
$1 million at least.
Probably last time they checked, it was 1.7.
Wow.
From a $10,000 investment.
Wow.
My childhood a friend of mine who grew up in Alpharetta, they weren't rich and they lived on Cricket Lane, and she sold her childhood home to a developer for $1 million. But if you're not in the game, and I think that's one of the things that I really want to stress to people, so many times, we had the mortgage meltdown and mortgage imploded and, they were in bad loans, but people were also in things that they couldn't afford. Mm-hmm. You don't need a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath to start. Because the bottom line is I'd rather own a 3.2 than rent a 4.4. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You have to start somewhere. So a lot of times with people, I just say this is just your stepping stone. Think about anybody who bought before 2020. Anybody who bought 16, 17, 18, 19. I mean, their equity went up like overnight.
Instantly. Yeah.
Instantly. I mean, it was like in 2021, I think everybody had at least 50,000 in equity, if not more. Yeah. From just buying, 2 years ago. So to me, it's just crucial to always buy. That is really the quickest way to transfer generational wealth.
Yeah, and what you talk about is so good. I think when I think about it, I think people are always looking for the quick hit. Right, and when I think when they look at home ownership, they feel like it's so long. But one of the things I always tell my kids, I'm always telling my team, employees, and anybody younger than me, is that them 10 years, them 20 years, them 30 go like that. And one of my biggest regrets, I bought a new construction townhome when I was 21 years old.
You sold it?
I sold it, and then later on, one time I was talking to my oldest daughter, and I was telling about me when I was younger, and I went and looked up that property.
How much?
And, I bought it for, I think, like $120. At the time, it was like $250. And this was just probably been like 5-10 years ago. So now it's probably like $400,000.
Exactly.
But the thing that hurt the most, when I looked, it looked like the young lady, it was a young lady that was a single mom that bought it from me. It looked like she still owned it.
And she's renting it out.
And the thing is, my original mortgage would have been done by now.
Yep.
And when I look at it, it don't feel like it was that long ago, right? Like at the time, it was like, I got like this 30-year mortgage. I was paying the extra principal payment on it.
So you were
every
paying
year
that
already.
So
it was.
You already do.
It was.
What you're supposed to do.
I'll tell you, I feel bad. It's making me feel bad. I got to change the topic.
It's okay.
But it's a learning experience.
It is.
It's a learning experience.
Because you were a perfect example of that first house to keep. That first house that maybe, obviously at 21, 22, that wasn't your dream home, but you had the wherewithal at that age to let me buy something. Now, if you had taken it one step further, the next house, it's like I always tell people, even if you're thinking about buying another house, go ahead and get a home equity line available to you now, because not to get like technically into mortgages, but your down payment the only time your down payment can be a loan is secured property. So you can use your equity from one house to buy another house. And that's important too. So that would have been another way. So I always tell people, get a home equity line when you don't need it. When your credit is good, when the money's there, just have it so you have access to your equity when you need it.
Yeah, and I'm glad it hurt, but I'm glad I shared it with the viewers.
Absolutely.
Because a cautionary tale, right? Like taking at the time, because I was there like maybe 4 years before I moved to something. At the time, what I might have gotten was like $20K by the time we sold. By the time the realtor fees and everything, I might have got $20K. But taking that $20K up front cost me $200K at least, right, in my net worth over the next few decades, which again feels like a blink of an eye. I can remember the day I can remember picking out all the stuff. And at the time, now it seems so far away. But life moves fast.
Well, and here's another quick hack, really quick, for everybody. School just let out, and now we've got summer coming up. We've got all our kids going off to college. So this is what I say to adults, and this is only for fiscally responsible adults. I have to do that disclaimer. Right. Like if you all jacked up, don't jack up your kids. Leave them alone. Let them find their way. Okay, give them some financial books to read. But what you should do is immediately put them on 2 of your credit cards as authorized users. I recommend when they graduate. People start 2 doing it at 14 and all
Exactly.
of that. I'm not into that legally. Technically, we could. No 14-year-old needs a credit card. You know what I mean? Just let them start building credit legit when they graduate from high school. After 2 years on that first year as 2 authorized users, second year, get them their own card. Now they're in college, the freshman year, sophomore year. Now junior year, they've got credit. But where's their job? Their school's their job. So you know what you're going to do? You're going to buy your son or your daughter their first townhouse or house as, now they're the non-occupant, you're a non-occupant co-borrower, so they get to put 3% down or 3.5% down as a first-time home buyer. Down payment is low. Interest rate is the current market. It's not higher because it's investment. Now they're a junior in college. They've got their roommates paying their mortgage. And when they graduate, now it's family decision time. Family decision time is, are we going to hold on to this and run it to other college students, or are we going to sell it? And now because if you, let's say you go to Clark or Morehouse or Spelman, do you want to stay in Atlanta? I don't. Okay, well, take that money and go. You can sell it and go buy your own house. But you've built their credit, you built them equity, and then now they're living for free in a college town. So I think that's one of the biggest things that people can do, and that really correlates to your story, because it's the same thing. At the end of those 2 years, now it's the parent and the child's decision. What are we going to do with this house?
I love it. I love it. Now, what would you say? Because, like I said, a lot of conversation I see on the internet now is based around, hey, it's bad to own. Like home ownership is bad. Home ownership, because then you got to take care of stuff if it breaks. Then you got to take care of, it's cost you all this extra money. You'll never realize the value and potential of it. Have you heard these conversations?
I've heard it, but I don't understand it. I mean, the bottom line is, I really feel bad for people who have never owned, and now they're 70 and 80. And it's like they're 70, they're 80, and number one, they're in the same place that they've lived, and there's no equity, there's nothing to leave to anyone. So to say don't buy because it's I can't even, like my mind can't even compute that, because to me, like, how is not owning something a good thing? You can't take it with you anyway when you go.
Right.
So let's just say you didn't buy anything, but now you have all this cash. What are you going to do with the cash? You can't take that with you either. You know what I mean? So to me, I would always, I always recommend people that they need to buy. I don't see any reason. I mean, if you're coming to a state and you don't know how long you're going to be there, maybe 2-3 years. But to me, if you have the money, it could still be your first investment property.
Yeah, that's true.
Just get a property manager to own it so that you're not feeling all emotional if the people don't pay their rent.
Right.
But I just feel like you should own. I think that's the biggest, like I said, I just think that's the biggest wealth gap that we don't have, is because we don't have that house that was our grandmother's, our great-great-grandparents,
And touched on two things touching on what you said earlier. The fact that a lot of people I know assume that the black community is looking for handouts. But as you mentioned, like a lot of generational wealth in this country was built off of coming out of the Great Depression, the big deal.
Absolutely.
Right, can we talk about that a little bit, right? Because really white Americans were given access to loans and home ownership.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen The Banker on?
Yeah.
I mean, The Banker was one of my favorite movies, and it just really showed, number one, that was commercial real estate. So that's really where the real money is. That's a whole other story. That was commercial real estate. But if it was necessary what happened to them, because, I'm a Romans 8:28 girl. What happened to them, although they lost all of that wealth, the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968. So, but discrimination still exists, and that's one of the reasons I opened up my mortgage company, is because I just got so tired of, seeing, like, why are rates like your rate should not be higher based on your color of your skin. Right. The respect level that you receive, I would just literally hear coworkers talking to people like they were doing them a favor, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't. this isn't right. You know, and I take mental notes. I'm not a victim. I mean, everybody can, you know, we all have stories of racism, a promotion you didn't get, an account you didn't get. But I just take mental notes, and because I don't believe in burning bridges. So there's not one person in the last, 18 years in Atlanta that I work for that would not hire me again, or that if I see them, they will not give me a hug and say, "Oh my goodness, Tanya, so good to see you," blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Because it's just important for us to own, and it gives security to children.
If you're a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur, a black business owner, and you don't know where to go, if you feel like you're alone, if you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to that gets how you feel or gets the pressures of being a business owner in today's climate, guess what we do? I want to introduce you to the Traffic Sales and Profit Mastermind. Now, in the TSP Mastermind, we have a 12-month program that's going to help you reach your next 6, 7, or 8 figures in business over the course of a year. Now, along that year, we have one-on-one coaching, we have accountability, we have community, we have live events, and everything you need in order to reach the next level. For more information, visit us at www.trafficsalesandprofit.com.
Like, I think home ownership is really, yes, to pass on to for generational wealth, but also the stability and security that it gives a child when they know that it's their house is a whole different feeling, and it's a whole different, and it's pride, and that's why a child really doesn't care if it's a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, blah, 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 or a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but that's your room. This is our land. This is our house. It's a whole different kind of pride than, Mr. Walker's coming by on the 5th to pick up his rent money.
Yeah, that's good. A lot of what you're talking about, it makes me think about education.
Yes.
Right, and a lack of education a lot of times, because in a lot of spaces, like, we are still like first generational of ownership, right?
Yes.
And kind of starting over. And I think it's important not to start from scratch. I often talk about the fact my grandmother and my grandfather, they owned a home in Alexandria, Virginia, Northern Virginia.
Ooh, that's money, honey. Yeah, go
which
ahead.
Is money. But, they bought it in the 50s for very little money, right? Because it was a black area town, of course. But as we know, all the black area towns eventually turned back older. And my one of the things I'm most proud of, my grandfather, who was from, Madison County, Georgia, down here, 8th grade education, worked construction his whole life, had paid that home off by the time he passed.
Wow.
But lack of education around real estate and wealth
Taxes
building, not just taxes. My grandmother did reverse mortgage on that home.
See, I'm not.
Yeah. And so can we? Yeah.
Can
so
we talk about reverse
let's talk about that.
mortgages for a
Yeah. Let's
second?
talk about it for a second, right?
Okay.
Because what happened is we ended up, when she passed, no one had the money to pay for that home, but it was a home that's already paid off. And the money that my grandmother got for it, she didn't need the money. She just was.
It was just someone spoke to her and
Exactly.
said, "What are you doing?" Well, I personally, this is one thing about me. I don't sell anything I don't believe in. And I don't believe in reverse mortgages. If someone wanted me to do a reverse mortgage for them and they had a really good reason, I would have to sit down and say, okay, give me this exit strategy for this reverse mortgage. Who in your family knows about this reverse mortgage? When you pass, where's the paperwork to the bank? Because it give you 6 months to get it, to buy it back from the bank, which is crazy. Buy it back from the bank, and then they'll do an extension. But even then, people they literally just give the bank the house to the bank.
Exactly.
And I just feel like reverse mortgages. My parents own a 2-family house in Jamaica, Queens. Could they use the money? Absolutely. But I'd rather go on the loan like a non-occupant co-borrower, get some equity out, opposed to ever doing a reverse mortgage, because reverse mortgages are really, I just don't like them. So you're never going to hear me say, even me saying have the 2 people there that know, you can hear how uncomfortable I am, because I just don't think it's a good product. I think that if you have to do a reverse mortgage if your mother or father has to do a reverse mortgage, then the family needs to get together and say, okay, who's got the best credit and the
Right.
most income that we could be, because even Fannie Mae allows you to go on a loan with a parent at 95% loan to value if you were buying it, or refinance if they can't take care of themselves. So there are programs out there without doing a reverse mortgage. There are programs out there for if your parents are older and it's time for them to sell their house or rent their house, and now you want them down here with you, but not necessarily in your house. They're still kind of independent. Fannie Mae lets you do, it's a 95%, 5% down conventional loan, and it looks like it's owner occupied, and it's like it's killing two birds with the one stone. You're taking care of your parents, and then you're also still building wealth through real estate.
I love it. Can you tell, for the people that may not know what reverse mortgage
Okay,
is? Can you
so a reverse mortgage is really either you own your house free and clear, or your mortgage amount is very small, and then it's a reverse. They give you the equity out now, and so instead of waiting till you pass away to give it, that's the spiel that they give you.
Exactly.
Don't leave it to your family members, spend your money. And then what they do, it's uploaded in fees, so they make all their money up front, and then every month either you can get a lump sum, or every month they were paying your grandmother. And hindsight's 20/20. You know what I mean? I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just not knowing. It just sounds good. It's like, oh, well, reverse. Let's get our money
and
now.
She's older. Somebody might talk to her.
Exactly. Somebody talked to her. She filled out the paperwork, and that was it. I did one with a grandmother, and it was two brothers. And I'll never forget their last name, Middlebrook. So if they're listening, I don't remember their first. I think one of them was Abraham. But I never forget there were two brothers, and I was determined that we were going to get this house back, and we did. You know what I mean? But it was a lot of work, and then there's stress on the family, and then who's putting their credit up, and when am I getting my money back? It's like, oh.
Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts. Yeah. I love it. So again, right, just focus on that education and us becoming more educated consumers.
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
absolutely. Yep.
Now, when we talk about home ownership, I know a lot of people are probably watching and saying, that sounds good. I want to own a home. But what about now? Like, interest rates are higher. Interest rates have gone up. I'm waiting and I'm on the sidelines. Like.
Well, you're going to be waiting on the sidelines for a while. Okay, number one, interest rates at 2-3% during COVID were imaginary. They weren't real rates. It wasn't real. It was what we needed to do to keep the economy going and moving. So to think that you're going to get rates 2 to 3%, you're not. I was just telling the story that I bought my house in Alpharetta in January 2006. I closed. I paid $249,900. And my rate was 100% finance, and my rate was 6.5 on the first, interest only. Second, it was 10.5. And asked me if I regret buying. You can't buy anything in Alpharetta right now for $249,000.
Not
Nothing.
at all. That's when you were saying that, I was like.
Yeah, and that was a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house. But even then, I sacrificed, and it sounds, you're gonna be like, oh, you sacrificed. I wanted a basement so bid. I wanted a basement, and I was in church, take the limits off, and I put a contract for I think it was $350, and my mom said, Tanya, me and your dad are real proud of you, but 2 years ago we were helping you pay your rent. And that was her way of saying, so thank goodness, my compromise, and that's what you have to do when you're buying a house. I'm not a realtor, but that's what you have to do. I did the master and the main. So I still got, my kids always had upstairs to themselves. I always had downstairs, but that was my compromise. So that's the flip side. You can't always get everything you want in that first house. But do I regret? And then years later, I refinanced to a 15-year at 2.75.
Wow. Yep. But you had it to refinance.
I had it to refinance. Exactly. And thank God I didn't get that house. That was 06. What happened in 08, 09? Yeah. You know what I mean? Everything crashed. Everything imploded. It was hard to do loans. The loan amounts were small. The Frank Dodd Act messed up your comp. Like, it was a lot going on. So thank God I had the house for $249, not the one for $359.
I love it. Good stuff, right? I was telling people, like, now is always the best time. Like, you got to get started. You got to get in the game. You got to get moving. Especially when it comes to real estate.
Absolutely, and there's really no bad time. I mean, if you think about even 9, 10, 11, 12, when, everything's, houses were 60,000, 50,000. You regret. You don't think I don't regret not buying back then when Fannie Mae had 10% investor?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I look back and I'm like, oh, but you know what? You have to start where you are. You got to take those lessons, learn from them. Like, I guarantee you, I know one of your kids, when they go to college, when they're a junior, you're going to be buying something for them and making that decision.
And that's why I would look at it too, right? I say that, hey, you know what? I made that mistake, but now it's my job to make sure my children never do.
Exactly.
And because somebody, as long as we learn from the things that
absolutely,
happen. Like, things happen in life all the time. As long as we learn from them.
Exactly. Or let other people learn from us. You know what I mean? That's the flip side too, is that some of the lessons that it's like, I wish I'd have just learned that from Lamar and I had to go through it myself, but that's life too.
I love it. Now, if somebody's watching, they say, okay, this is good. I want to get moving. I want to get started. If they're a first-time home buyer and they're trying to figure out, like, what are the steps and what's the process for them actually getting funding for an actual home? What does that look like for them?
I would say first-time home buyer, first thing you need to do is really look at your budget. Realistically, where do you feel comfortable with your monthly mortgage payment? Because I think the biggest thing that's happened to Atlanta that's really horrible is that we just really don't have middle class anymore, And when I say middle class, I bought my house for $249. Where are you buying it? My school's Chattahoochee, Taylor Road, Abbots Hill. Where are you buying for $249 now? You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that you give up and you don't buy. Just look at your budget. And so right now, rent in Atlanta is ridiculous. Everybody's paying at least $2,000 for rent, no matter where you live in. So you're paying really between $2,000 and $3,000 for rent. So that probably gives you around a $300,000 sales price. But I would start with my budget, then I would look at my credit, get away from Credit Karma, run. Credit Karma is there to sell you. They recently just got sued. They're there to sell you stuff. They're not there. I mean, it's great for credit monitoring if you want to see if something happened, but if you want to know your real score, you have to go to myfico, myfico.com. MyFICO, pay the $29, and it's going to give you all your scores. So you're going to see your 2, 4, and 5 mortgage score. And so you say, okay, so you know that if I pull your credit, if your mortgage score on MyFICO was 742, that's your mortgage score. On Credit Karma, if your score was 742, if you have a high score like a 742 at Credit Karma, it's probably a 680. It's probably a 680, 690, maybe 7. But if you've got a 580 on Credit Karma, when I pull you, you're probably going to be about a 540.
Okay.
Which is why my FICO is so important.
Yeah.
So you want to do that. You want to make sure your credit. I really say for FHA, you really want a 640 score. Conventional goes down to 620, but mortgage insurance, which if you're not putting 20% down, you have what's called private mortgage insurance. And mortgage insurance is based on credit score. So just because you can qualify with a 620, honey, that MI is going to be so high, you're not going to be able to go conventional. You know what I mean? Yep. So I would say 680 for conventional, 640 minimum for FHA is where you should just start. And then you should just start getting all your documents ready. Just think of everything in twos. You know what? They're going to need my last 2 years of W-2s. They're going to need my pay stubs. They're going to need my bank statements. They're going to need my ID. My biggest thing is it can really be a smooth process, but you have to have all your documents in order and legible. Don't start with the screenshots. People will say to me, oh my gosh, Tanya, that was so easy. I could take credit, but I also got to give you credit too. I got to give you credit that when I asked you for something, you gave it to me right away. You've got to give the home buyer credit too. It's not all the loan officer, because just like when a deal can go haywire at the end, if I've been asking for something for 2 weeks and you get it to me 2 days before closing, and now that's not what we need, you can cause yourself a lot of angst in the process if you just take your time to look at your goal. If you're in a lease right now, when is that lease up? Just start setting your goals, just start setting your goals. And then if you think about your down payment, with down payment and closing costs, you're probably gonna need like $20,000. Then systematically say, how much do I have to save every pay period, and go open up an account at a credit union that you can't see, you can't use, you can't touch, and just let the money start building.
That's so good. One of the things I wanted to mention too, you probably, because you focus primarily Georgia and Florida?
Georgia and Florida.
Georgia and Florida, right?
But I do through, and see, I'm just one of those people, I'm just completely transparent. So I'm licensed in Georgia and Florida, but I do have a relationship with a bank so that I can do 32 other states. So I can do California, Texas, et cetera. Although MCCA is getting licensed in those states, I do have ability to do them in other states now.
Okay.
But me, as a lender, I'm in Florida and Georgia.
Just awesome, because I was going to mention one of the other things that just experience we ran into in the past was realizing that if we went to a bank and either they said no or they didn't have favorable terms, that didn't mean
absolutely
everything was over, right? But like even that was the thing we had to learn, you know. And even when our last home, we went to someone and they, you know, they wouldn't give us the money, but like the interest rate was a lot crazier than we thought and everything like that. And you know, called a friend, referred to somebody that went to them, and they were able to get the whole thing done. Few percentage points less.
Yeah, I know.
And move it through.
You know what it is? It really is. Brokers are better, you know, and that is really the reason that we're better than a bank is because number one, you have to remember, all the big banks lost their shirts during. They don't want to do mortgages. I mean, they don't. They have to say that they do. You know, private wealth. I mean, if you doing jumbo, you know, they're going to take really good care of you. But just, you know, Jane and Johnny, they're really, and the process is so cumbersome. It's so long. It's one department. Where if you go to a mortgage broker, you could easily. Number one, your approval process is going to be faster and you're going to close faster, and then you have more options. And, you know, and the nice thing about being a broker is sometimes, you know, you didn't realize something until the underwriter saw it and you're like, okay, well, the next underwriter didn't see it because I can move it. You know what I mean? Opposed to if you're at a bank and you get denied, now you're just denied. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you're denied and now you got to start all over, where if something happens in the broker world and I'm like, ooh, okay, let's move it here. We've got some options. And then also because we're brokers, we can control really the overhead. And that's another thing too. I mean, rates are rates, but all rates are not created equal. You know, all companies are not created equal when it comes to interest rates as well.
All right, that's so good. Now I want to switch gears for a second, because also now you've been helping other entrepreneurs or people that want to be entrepreneurs actually get into the mortgage loan industry.
Yes.
Like what was behind that, and can you tell me a little bit more?
Well, what was behind that? So I created a course for new loan officers. It's 6 months to 6 figures. And the reason that I created the course is because I had a gentleman come work for me, and he was newly licensed, and just listening to him he'd been in the business for like 6 months, and just listening to him take the application, I was like, whoa. It was kind of like, oh, Lamar, name, address, and he went to where you work, then he went to your social, and I was like, oh, wait. So I realized that when you get licensed with you get your NMLS license, you're like, ooh, yay, I've got my license, but nobody really teaches you how to take an application, how to talk to your client, how to read, a credit report. So that's why I created the course, and I named it 6 months to 6 figures, because you're 100% commission. And if you were like me starting out, you didn't have time to, you needed to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
So I even included a 30-day jump start to help them go out and get business. So, because I'm very much, I don't like passive activity. I don't like knocking. I don't like putting flyers on doors, mailing stuff to the post office. I don't even really like giving my card opposed to taking I'll always give my card, but I will always take the card. Because if you take the card, you're the one in control. You're the one with the follow-up. If you just give out 100 cards every day, now you got to wait for 100 people maybe to call you.
Exactly.
Opposed to if you get 100 cards, you got 100 people to call.
Very good. So how can they get a hold of the course?
So you can go online. It's MadisonChaseAcademy.com. And my company and my school are both named after my children. So my daughter's Madison and my son is Chase. Once again, back to that generational wealth and inheritance.
That's
legacy.
That's what legacy is all about.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, Tanya, I want to thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for sharing with the audience.
It's so good.
You shared so many things. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Hopefully y'all got tons of nuggets out of today's episodes. And don't forget, the main thing is for you to take action. Get off the sidelines, get into the game. Every episode we do about real estate, always say that you have to get started. now, right? Make sure you watch. You might need to watch this episode again because it was that good and so much in it. This is Lamar Tyler, founder of Traffic Sales and Profit Show. And we'll see you next week with another amazing episode.
The Combo, your home for conversations on Black entrepreneurship and wealth. Available on your favorite platforms.